The biggest problem with coding agents today is that people usually use the same model for writing code and then verification or debugging.
This is the useful part of the Mavis demo, and it is bigger than MiniMax. Most agent setups still treat verification like a second pass from the same brain. That is better than nothing, but it is not a review. If the verifier inherits the same chat history, the same assumptions, and the same plan, it is mostly checking whether the original story sounds consistent. I would not trust that on a real repo. The pattern that matters here is simple. Produce the artifact, hand the artifact plus the spec to a fresh verifier, and make the verifier prove where the work is wrong. So the first rule is isolation. A clean verifier should not read the producer's scratchpad unless the scratchpad is itself the deliverable. Give it the test, the diff, the requirements, the acceptance criteria, maybe the public docs. Do not give it the comforting chain of decisions that made the bug feel reasonable. That is where a lot of agent workflows fail. They add a reviewer agent, but the reviewer is sitting inside the same context bubble. It agrees because the framing has already been loaded into its head.
But if you have really good specs out there, you can actually parallelize a lot of these steps. A lot of work doesn't actually depend on the previous step. Reviewing 4 files for a pull request, maybe translating one document into 4 different languages, or generating tests across 4 different modules. None of those needs to.
The second useful rule is decomposition, but only when the task actually splits cleanly. 4 independent research questions? Sure. 4 modules with separate test surfaces? Good. A translation job into 4 languages? Fine. But parallel agents are not magic. If each worker needs the result of the previous worker, you just created noise and coordination overhead. The good version looks like a build system. Independent tasks fan out. Shared assumptions are written down. The merge step has a real owner. Then verification runs after the merge, not as a polite note in the same chat.
So the research phase is done. And then after the research phase, it actually created independent verifiers for all the claims. So this one is for the M2.7. Here it says verification completed. There seems to be an error or an issue that it couldn't verify some of the things, right? So it went back and redid the analysis, which is pretty great, right?
This is the part I will copy into my own workflow, not the branding, not the mascot agent, the architecture. For coding, I want one worker making the change, one reviewer starting from the diff and test, and maybe a third agent looking only for missing edge cases. For research, I want separate agents collecting sources, then a verifier checking claims against primary sources. For content, I want one pass writing the script and another pass looking only for vague claims, weak hooks, and factual drift. Same pattern, different artifacts. Same pattern. There are 2 caveats. First, verification costs tokens and time. If the task is tiny, use tests and move on. Second, independent does not mean clueless. A verifier still needs a spec. If you hand it a vague goal, it will verify against vibes. The clean setup is boring. Write the requirement, write the artifact, run the test, then ask a fresh verifier to attack the gap between those 3 things. That is where the pattern earns its keep. My verdict, the verifier pattern is the part to steal. A multi-agent UI is nice, but the real win is separating producer, reviewer, and evidence. If you are building with agents today, do not start by asking for more agents. Start by asking what each agent is allowed to know. Fresh context beats friendly review. Parallel work only helps when the work is actually independent. And memory is useful only if you treat it like a database, not a diary.